Good morning and welcome back to the Closer's Inner Circle podcast with your host, Denise Griffiths and Ben Gay III. We're back with episode 15 of the Closer's Inner Circle Masterclass, and we're continuing our deep dive into sales infiltration, which is drawn from the Closers Part 2, page 257, if you're asking. This isn't about memorizing scripts. It's about mastering advanced strategies that turn conversations into lasting commitments. And I'm losing my voice, Ben. We've got a heck of a storm out there today. So just kind of bear with me if I pause and cough all over you. So in the, I hope I don't. In these masterclass episodes, Ben, who is a legendary salesman and author, and a mentor, my mentor specifically, just so y'all know, he's my mentor, uses the book as a launch pad to explore what really makes sales happen. And it's part psychology, part storytelling, and it's all grounded in real world results. So inside the episode, and I'm going to make a little codicil here, if we don't get sidetracked, as we tend to do, there's just so much to talk about. How to read between the lines and spot what your prospect isn't saying. Language patterns that shift with your style and theirs. I see this all the time. And stories, this is my favorite part, stories straight from Ben's decades in the field, including how to pivot when the script falls flat. And if you've been with us from week one or just found the show, these episodes deliver sharp, practical insights you can use immediately. Oh, and listener tip, keep your closers books nearby. Mine are always within eyeshot. So you want to have those because Ben refers to them often, and you want to highlight the gold as it shows up. So tune in, take notes, and join us as we sharpen the sales instincts that separate pros from amateurs. Oh, and do you have questions? I keep saying that today. Oh, you have questions? Send them in. We do our best to answer them on air each week. Ben, it's Wednesday. I'm always so glad to hear your voice.
Same here for you. I always look forward to it. It's one of those bright spots in my week. Some things I have to do are chores, but working with you every week is not one of them.
Oh, and I could hear my mom. She's gone now. I can hear her in my voice saying, bright spot. What?
Denise,
Thanks, Mom. Love you too. So, what are we talking about today? I know you mentioned in the virtual green room that you have some questions. I think that we didn't get to kind of handle last week.
yeah, you just reminded me of one. Oh, you're talking about bright spot. I ran a, we ran a, I think it was a quarter page ad uh, when I decided to get serious about speaking outside of my own company in the Wall Street Journal. Uh, this is years ago, but the headline was "A Legend in His Own Time," and then it was a picture of me, and it talked about how wonderful life would be if I came and talked to your organization. My mother, who took the Wall Street Journal, called. I could many things in my life that I didn't do right made the national news or something, and word would go from California to Atlanta, where she was at the time. And she called me. She said, "I was just reading an ad in the Wall Street Journal."
Uh-oh.
I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah. Let me give you a suggestion for the headline." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, instead of legend in his own time, why don't you make it legend in his own mind?"
Thanks, Mom. See, we had the same kind of mother. We really did.
That's what
That's,
reminded me of it.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks
no
a lot.
filters. You know where I don't get why I have no filters, and I'm pretty sure I know what side of the tree it came from. No filters. I love, so did you change the ad or
No,
did you just say thanks,
no,
Mom?
I think we ran it a little longer just so she'd have to see it every once a week or whatever it was. She'd have to see it some more. But I love things like that because they're attitude adjusters. One time she was a graphologist. She studied, handwriting and what it meant and so on. And whether you think that's a intelligent thing to do or not, I don't know. I thought it was a little goofy, but she really enjoyed it. And one day I was back in Atlanta visiting with her, and I got out my old social security number or driver's license, social security card or driver's license, something. and there was I had to sign it on the bottom, and there was Ben Gay, I think even Ben F. Gay, the third, very small. They didn't give me a lot of room to write it, so that's part of the defense for that, but very small, very tentative, little bitty letters and all. And then you've seen in my books how I sign now, which is not as flamboyant as John Hancock or Donald Trump, but it's got a little flair to it and can fill up a whole page if I want it. And I said, well, Mother, um, and I wrote out the way I write my name now and then showed her that card. And I said, what's the difference since you're a graphologist? She pointed at the little one. She said, well, that was written when you were a human being. And today's signature was written after you decided you were King Kong.
I love your mom. I think I've said that. I think I've said that before, but graphologist, I get it. Years ago, when I first started my web development company, a friend of mine had introduced me to this chiropractor that she thought I could build a website for. And he said, well, can you make me some notes? And I wrote down a few notes. And he looked at it, he just kind of glanced at, he's, oh, you're frigid. And me, without a single filter, said, oh, you're a pompous ass. I didn't get the job. So I walked out. Yeah,
Laura,
sometimes filters are good, and sometimes you just gotta let them rip.
yeah, I frequently, as I know you do, I hear things I've said at exactly the same time the audience or recipient hears them.
Mhm.
They're just as surprising to me as they are to them. And I say to myself almost immediately, got to work on that filter.
But you know what? I've been trying, and sometimes I actually will say, "Oh, geez, I need to go make an apology." It doesn't happen very often, but when I know I really kind of over-filtered myself or under-filtered myself, I will go apologize. But this guy, I just walked like, and he told my friend later, he said, "Well, your friend's kind of bitchy," and she said, "Did you hear what you said to her?" You know, I was standing there. I warned you, she doesn't play with others very well. She's
Yeah,
very good at what she does, but she's not going to play, happy dance with you. So,
yeah. When he said your friend was sort of bitchy, um, I would have said if I were you and had heard that, well, okay, but what's your point?
yeah, really, what part of it did you miss? So, anyway,
You
but
said
yeah,
something as we were getting ready to talk
I did.
about um, something about what is or isn't or something like that. But anyway, it triggered me how little sentences can change things. Mark Levin, one they call the Great One
All
on
right.
Fox News,
He's an
real.
attorney, isn't he?
I think he not a practicing one currently.
Oh,
Currently,
okay.
he's a full-time television guy, but yeah, he is an attorney. But he reached out to me. I never had any contact with him or anything because he had read something I wrote from my years of working at San Quentin and Lompoc Federal Penitentiary. And it was something I think I just picked up from an inmate. I really don't recall, but it sums up so much about life. The saying I picked up was, prison isn't where you are, it's where you aren't.
Oh,
And he wrote out and he said that reached out and said that was brilliant. And we've become Facebook friends ever since and email on a regular basis and so on. I feel somewhat intimidated by him, not much, but intellectually he's smarter than I am. I don't like that. I may be longer in the common sense business and practical application business, but he is just whip uh, smart. And but I was really flattered. We were connected by one sentence that I picked up somewhere and stuck in something, and unbeknownst to me, he was reading it. But for those of our listeners, this describes a whole lot of situations that people are in. You can help people with it, and you can help yourself with it. And it is, again, prison is not where you are, it's where you aren't. And I've spent enough time in that environment to know exactly what that means.
Mhm.
Uh, there are people get institutionalized in prison because it's really not a bad life. I mean, if you're in a dungeon being beaten by people in shiny armor or something, but that isn't really what goes on in prison. What goes on in prison is they can't run a prison without the prisoners, and so they're careful not to abuse them too much, if at all. You can get on the wrong side of the administration and not have a pleasant life until they figure you've learned your lesson. But by and large, you just go about your business. But there's a fence or a wall, and beyond it is out of your reach. That's where you aren't. And that's what weighs on your mind all the time. But I see it in people in selling. Uh, they're trapped in a certain income level or a bad job or selling rotten products or so on, and they're not willing to do what's necessary to be where they want to be. They settle for being trapped where they are. I talk to people who say, I hate my boss and I hate the company and the products suck and so on. I said, how long you been there? 20 years. Well, as Rohn used to say, move. You're
Get
not a
out of
tree.
there. I know. What is holding you back? Well, I get a paycheck. Well, until you don't, because your boss finally has had enough of you.
Yeah. So anyway, there's that. And then I made some notes as the week went on because and people were talking to me about it. Some are selling, some are not. Uh, if you're going to lie, here's one. If you're going to lie about something, make sure it can't be checked. You and
Yeah,
I talked last week about
we did.
Sylvia,
I love
Sybil,
Sylvia. Sybil.
Sybil.
Yeah, Sybil, right. And I wrote it down because, like, my neck, if I ever have to get another cat, I've got plenty now. But if a little female cat comes walking up to my door, which is my 20-year-old, she and her sister walked up to my door 20 years ago, and it's bound to happen. Nature
Sure.
abhors a vacuum. If something happens to her, I'm sure a little female cat will show up. And guess what it's going to be named? It's going to have
Sybil.
attitude. Yeah, Sybil Griffiths.
Yeah, well, they come with the attitude. You don't have to worry about that. We have a cat that spends more time with us than the other main cat. And Gigi's always saying, "Oh, he's so sweet. He loves me." I said, "No, he doesn't. He loves being scratched. He loves being petted. He loves curling up on your pillow. He loves the food you give him. He loves the fact that every time he looks at you, you go, 'Oh, do you want a treat?' And she gives him some treats out of a jar she keeps beside the bed on the
Right.
floor.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a canister on the counter. I open it and all of a sudden, boom, and you hear all these, feet just hitting the ground. It sounds like a zoo.
I taught Gigi that. I've always had cats around, although I'm really a dog person. But Gigi's going, come on, Thomas, come on here, kitty, kitty. I said, rattle the treat jar.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah.
rattle the treat jar, bam, there it is.
All I have to do is open the pantry door and they're like, "Ooh, what's in there?"
That's where she keeps them.
I have one cat. His name is the Vicar. He's a Burmese, he's black. He looks like a house panther, but he has a little white priest collar and he does not take his orders seriously at all. He's a little thief. He really is. And I can't keep pistachios anywhere but in the refrigerator because he'll get them.
Huh.
Doesn't matter what they're in, how many times they're bagged or put in a canister, he'll get them.
Shelled also?
Yep. He just
Wow.
wants the bag. He just dumps it on the ground and off he goes. It's
I
like,
didn't know
dude,
they liked them.
I didn't
Pistachios are
either.
my evil,
Yeah, you and me
my
both.
addiction. Especially one, I like them because of the taste and the crunchiness and so on. So I was eating them anyway. But then I read a thing about how good pistachios are for you. They're high in vegetable protein, high in fiber, and they taste good.
And they're delicious. I love them.
Yeah, so I sort of doubled down from that moment on. Thank you for letting me see that, Jesus. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
High in protein. If
Yeah,
Gigi catches me with my head over the bowl in the kitchen going through them at high speed, my standard response is, they're high in protein.
they are. Yeah. And I've got ginger, ginger flowers in my backyard. They just run amok. And I was out there yesterday pulling to see, can I harvest? Well, I can't. We're 3 or 4 months away from harvesting. But I'm like, there's got to be one in there that's big enough I can grate it. There's got to be. There's not. They're not ready.
Too bad. I started to dart off into a note I made during the day. If you're going to lie about something, don't lie about something where you'll be caught. And a thing, and this, believe it or not, has to do with selling, becoming aware, listening carefully, being aware of your surroundings, and being conversant on various things. I sometimes
Mhm.
talk to people and can tell by the blank look on their face, that they didn't, sort of like, oh, we have a new pope? Really? And I'm thinking,
Mm,
how do you exist in society? You don't
right.
have to be Catholic, you can be an atheist, you can be a devil worshiper, whatever. But if you read anything, watch any news, listen to any news on the radio, anything, you got to know uh, there's a pope, a new pope in the Catholic Church. And to to not know that is sort of frightening. The current one that got all sorts of publicity this week was when Jim Comey, I think is his name, the former head of the FBI, etc., mysteriously found on the beach where he was walking a beautifully laid out little sign in seashells, 8647. And
Yep.
he thought that was cute and he put it up on the internet because he thought it was cool. And then the uproar began and so on. Whether it was worthy of an uproar or not isn't the issue. The issue is that he got it hung around his neck that what
Oh,
he was
yeah.
doing was calling for
Yeah.
the assassination, 86, of 47, Trump. And
And he's
so,
come up with several different stories,
oh
that
yeah,
they all
which
contradict.
is also part of if you get
Right.
caught in a lie,
Right, right, right.
because his
But I was
story
gonna
changes
say
by
it,
changes, and he hung it
yeah,
around his wife's neck.
I know, nice guy.
It,
I keep wondering if anybody from the, FBI went and picked those up, found them, picked them up and looked for fingerprints. First thing I
fingerprints
would
might
have
be
done.
interesting. Yeah.
I know.
Which is one of the things when you get caught, if you're the former head of the FBI and a federal prosecutor and you were known for prosecuting RICO cases,
You know what
organized crime,
86
you know
means.
what 86
Yeah,
means. How could
even
you say
I
you
know, and
don't
I've
know?
never seen The Godfather, but I
Yeah.
know. Oh,
I even
yeah.
called a couple of, I called one friend, and another one was with him, who are, I said on Facebook the last day or two that I'm sort of famous for the type of people that I go out of my way to meet. I didn't spend time with Charlie Manson by accident. I didn't spend time I could name lots of people by accident. I went out of my way to befriend them and talk to them and also be able to talk about them. People are fascinated. I was attitude coach for the astronauts Apollo 15, 16, 17.
Right,
People are
right.
fascinated by that. And then if you want to have a conversation stopper, I said, well, when I was talking to Charlie Manson, I said, and people go, whoa, whoa, Charlie
Back up.
Manson, back up.
Yeah.
So anyway, on my list of interesting people, I have a couple of friends who are, actually I have more than that, but a couple that came to mind of the Las Vegas style of living. You can read between the lines there. So I called them and I
Hmm.
said, Comey says he didn't know what 86 meant, and they just cracked up laughing. I said, all right, so before I quote you or mention this on Facebook or LinkedIn, anything, tell me exactly, I know what it meant, but I want to make sure I was right. Tell me what 86 means. They said, well, it's a Las Vegas mafia term. It means to kill someone,
Right.
put them in the trunk of your car,
Take them down to the
drive
desert.
8 miles into the desert,
Right.
and then bury them 6 feet deep. That's 86. And I said, well, Comey said he didn't know that's what it meant. And they said various things I can't quote, but the gist of it was nonsense.
See, I didn't
Absolutely.
realize that that's what 86, what the genesis of that was. So
Yeah.
I just
8
wrote that
miles in the
down.
desert and
And
6 feet
six,
down.
got it. I'm writing that down.
Yep. So when you say 86 him, make sure you say, I just meant throw him out of the bar. Which is, in general vernacular, that's where you hear it most. You got thrown
Right.
out of a bar, or you're not welcome in a restaurant, or something like that. But Comey made the mistake of lying with something that could be readily checked, and then he tried to hang it on his wife. So the sales lesson there is don't do that. And as from last week, don't tell a buyer that some other buyer in a distant city bought a carload of your stuff for, for fear
That's
he will
still one
pick
of
up
my
the phone.
favorite. It's one of my favorite stories.
He'll pick up the
Y'all go
phone and
back to
say,
last week and listen to that because trust me, you'll be weeping from just laughing so hard.
and the punchline to the story is he said to his secretary on the phone, get Sybil on the line. Well, I knew what Sybil meant. Sybil was the gatekeeper for the guy I had just claimed had bought a carload of a hairspray I was selling. So he said, I'll be back in just a minute, and left. And I grabbed all my samples, my business card, any sign I had been in that office, and fled. And then because I knew Sybil only in stories from my father when I had dinner at the house, he always had a Sybil story. He was a food broker and he called on that chain, and Sybil was the bane of his existence. So when this guy said, get Sybil on the line, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I thought, oh, I'm caught.
I
I'm
gotta go
caught.
now. I would have
Yeah.
gone out the window.
Yeah. And if Comey has any conscience at all, that's what happened to him when the story started breaking. And then somebody asked about selling. How does selling fit into negotiating? Which reminded me, and I'll tell you that in a second. But negotiating is selling. You're selling your position, what you want to do. They're trying to sell their position, and the best salesperson usually wins. Best car buying experience I've ever had. Well, that's not technically true. The best car buying experience I ever had is 600 luxury automobiles over several years, bought from just two people, bought or leased, and given away primarily as sales victories, prizes, so on. But the best one-on-one sales experience I ever had was my mother-in-law at the time. She's now passed away. Saw a thing that Hertz was having one of their clearance sales at our local fairgrounds. And I went out and with her, she showed me a couple of cars she was interested in. I went over to get the price off the window and then called over a salesperson. I said, hi, my mother-in-law is mildly interested in this car. She'd already said, that's the one I want. Mildly interested in this car, but we need to discuss the price, of course, because um, here's a little chair, and the guy whips out a clipboard, flips to the page for that car, and says, "Yeah, yeah, they figured that in. They mentioned that." And here's a little, yeah, yeah, they mentioned that. That's one of the reasons is that price. I didn't yet know that Hertz has a single price at their uh, clearance sales, getting rid of rental cars that have passed their tax prime or whatever, and they're non-negotiable. And I thought after I learned the lesson and lost that car while I was doing my Ben Gay thing, guy walked up who knew the game and said, I like this car. I'll take it. And it was sold right out from under me. So I wound up getting her second choice, and which turned out to be a fine car. Drove it till the day she passed. But the non-negotiable thing stuck with me so because I love that. Put signs on the window, and that's the price. And car dealers listening to this might argue with that, but I'm telling you, customers love it. So price them right. And then if you want to lower the price on the sign on the window for everybody. In other words, you build a reputation. The price you see on the windshield is the price. And if you want to have a sale, put up a big sign, take 10% off all the prices you see. And then when you're done with that sale, take the sign down. It just really is a marvelous way. So I said all that to say this, a car dealership, actually a bigger family of dealerships, opened a separate car dealership here in town. And part of their advertising was single pricing, no negotiating. The price you see is the price you pay. And I thought, oh, great. I don't, because my old friends who sold me 600 cars have long since retired. One of them's dead and the other one's retired. So I didn't have a contact in that business anymore. So I thought, well, this takes the heat off. I love this. So I called the guy up and I said, hi, I just saw your ad. I told him the Hurt story. Told him I'd bought 600 cars to get his attention and so on. So I then said, so the price on the window is it, no negotiating. And he says, well, Ben, everything is negotiable.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Uh,
The
yeah.
benefit that he had, he threw out. And I didn't argue with him. I didn't debate with him. I just disconnected. Never did business with them. And they're no longer in business. The rest of the family businesses, Honda dealership, like a Toyota dealership, General Motors, they're still in business doing selling the old fashioned way, price it high and hope they buy, and if they don't, lower it and so on. But the one where they actually got it right went out of business because the people working in the dealership didn't have the courage to follow through with what the whole concept was, which what brought me to that was the general thing of negotiating. I did a thing on a podcast with a friend of mine the other day, and that was the subject, negotiating. And I've done whole seminars with it. Here's the secret. I'll give it to you in short form. You decide in advance what you're willing to pay. You'd like to pay less, but you would buy it at this price. And then that's the price. It's like the way I price physical things we sell and my seminars and so on. I call it pre-haggled.
Right, right. And I've used that term from you before. Keep going.
Well, that's, and it's really so effective. It's they'll say, well, now what if I bought 50 books from you? I said, well, look in the back of your book. There's a price chart there. Yeah, yeah, but I'm talking about if I really bought 50. I said, yeah, that's what we thought when we printed that chart. 50 carries a discount of whatever it is, and that's it. Pre-haggled.
Right.
I have never come off of that price or that percentage 1 point or 1 penny ever. Because if you do, you then are like the car guy on the phone. Well, everything is negotiable at my non-negotiable dealership, which he said in everything is in 3 words. He said, you can't believe our advertising. I'm a liar. And this is like any other dealership in the world. Come in and let's see who's the best.
And I'm desperate. I need a sale.
Yeah. And I'm desperate. I need the sale.
Right,
Right.
right. Listen,
So
you talk about pre-haggling, and I can get kind of ticky about some things. And if I know that I'm being played or something, similar to what you've been describing is taking place, I actually had, and I can't even remember now what it was about. I think I was trying to buy a pile of amethyst. I used to be a jeweler. And we got, we negotiated, we went back and forth, and that $5 extra that he was going to tack on there was the kicker for me. And I already didn't like the guy. I didn't trust him. And his stones weren't all that terrific. I was willing to pay this much, but he wanted to go that extra $5. I walked. He was yelling at me. We're in the Dallas. We were in the Dallas, tower, whatever you call that thing now. I can't remember. But he's yelling, "You're gonna walk for $5?" I said, "No, I'm gonna walk because you're dishonest."
there you go.
And I kept on going. After that, he'd see me there and he would just look away. He didn't like me no more. You know? And he was really upset. You're not going to give me that $5? Nope, I'm not.
Isn't that, you don't, and when I say you preset the price you're willing to pay, or you pre-haggle the price at which you're selling, I'm not talking about trying to get an extra $5 plus or minus. I'm saying that's the price. I was raised up in the retail business at Macy's, Davison's in Atlanta, but it was Macy's in the housewares department. No one in the 4 or 5 years I worked there, no one ever offered me less than the price on the fill in the blank, lawnmower, fry
Right.
pan, whatever. That was the price. You took it or you left it, and everybody knew it. And Macy's had trained everybody. That's the deal. And I don't think if we did a general markdown, if we did it with a certain colored purple pen on the price tag, and that was the only way to lower it, and we lowered it for everybody. You didn't mark it down because the lady or the gentleman just said, I'll give you $15 for the $20 fry pan. It was all or nothing. And I just thought that was the way life worked. It wasn't until I bought my first car from a dealership. I bought my first car that I discovered that the price was movable. And I remember being sort of disappointed. It was a new car. It was a 1972 Volkswagen Beetle. It was $1,848. And I had just come from other dealerships. The reason I bought the car, A, I could afford it, and B, that was the price. And I had just come from two or three other dealerships where, for different types of cars, it was 2,500, but if you take it today, it'll be 2,100, and if you take it next Thursday, the price is going up, and the this and the that. And I got to Volkswagen and Bill Spreen Volkswagen in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I looked down at the price in the window and it said $1,848. And I said, what will you really take for this? And he came all the way around the car, leaned down where I was looking, ran his finger down the price thing. He said, oh, it's right here, $1,848.
There you go.
You're like, you can't read? You're looking for a new car and you can't read? And I really, the tension went off me. I went, oh, good, I'm back home again. Now,
Right.
do I want to spend $1,848 for this car or not? And I did, and that was that.
Right.
So negotiating, have your position in front. They should make a college course, and this isn't political. Whether I'm for Trump, against Trump, or for him sometimes or against him sometimes, isn't the issue. But he is a master negotiator. I hope
He
they're going to
is.
teach college
He-
courses.
Oh,
Uh,
it's going in the history books. There's no question.
yeah, the one I love, it reminds me of $1,848 on the Volkswagen. You're negotiating with Iran, and how's that coming? He said, "Oh, it'll come along fine. We'll leave it in pleasantly or violently, because they're not going to have a
Mhm.
nuclear weapon or
Right.
the means to deliver a nuclear weapon or any other kind of long range missile." So you see the strength that gives him, as he told the guy in Ukraine in the Oval Office a few months ago, you're playing with a bad hand. You don't have any cards. I decide what you get. And the little guy's going, and Trump puts his hand on his arm and says, no, you have no
You
cards.
have no cards.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's Iran. We can talk. Maybe the Iranians will be allowed to wear pink hats on Thursdays. That's fine as part of the big deal. Or maybe they'll be able to change the spelling of their name. That's part of the big deal. But the main subject matter is we want nuclear weapons. And the answer is you're not going to have any, none. And I just thought he's got the strong hand and he's playing it magnificently. You can leap up and down and carry on and so on. But when the dust settles, I promise you, Iran isn't going to have nuclear weapons, nor are they going to have enriched uranium, nor are they going to have the ability to deliver them. Everything else that will be in the agreement by the time bureaucrats on both sides get messing around, I don't care. Have 15 parades a year. Um, do whatever you want to do as long as we understand if you have a nuclear weapon. And somebody I know that's pretty close to the administration, I told him, I said, as you get closer, just to get their undivided attention, why don't you have Trump say, by the way, people of Iran, we like you. There's nothing wrong with the people of Iran, generally speaking. The leadership is the problem. By the way, if you're a citizen of Iran, you know what's going on in your neighborhood and so on. So let me tell you, if you live anywhere near a government facility of any kind, office building, factory, whatever, if you live anywhere near all that digging went on a few years ago, where you suspect that down there are part of the nuclear facilities, I'm just telling you, please get away from it. Get as much distance between you and that building and you and that cannon and you and that hole in that hole in the ground as you possibly can, because I wish you well. And we really like the Iranian people. The guy said, "Oh, that's good." So I hope it gets back to Trump and that somehow it pops up in the general conversation. But it's also true. Not only are you not going to have any nuclear weapons, if necessary, I'm telling you how I'm going to take them out. And I've already told your people to get away from the facilities. So if there's any doubt about where any of the facilities are, by satellite, we can see who's scattering. Like if you drop pepper in water and there's ants in it or whatever, they go from the problem, the center of the problem, and they scatter in an almost
Right.
perfect circle.
Oh, I
The
didn't know
middle
that.
of that circle is where the problem is. So, get away from any nuclear facility. And meanwhile, we're looking down. 50 years ago, we could count the stitches on a baseball from outer space. Today, I suspect we could count the hairs on your head if we wanted to know. So when you start moving, because you're near one of those spots, we go, oh, we didn't know about that one. Must be right there. So that's negotiating from a position of strength, and you can create your position of strength on the selling side by pre-haggling and make sure it's reasonable and fair. I don't mean pre-haggle a stupid price, but pre-haggle what's fair, good for everybody. Everybody wins. They get their problem solved. You get the money. Um,
Right. That's
and
exactly right. And I've got a story too when you're done.
and when that's when selling. When buying, same thing. Go in with the Iranian nuclear missile attitude. This is what I'm willing to pay. And if you mystically come to that figure, I won't beat you over the head other than a little token resistance, because that's the figure I decided when I came in I was willing to pay. And when I hear that figure, we got a deal. And it takes all the pressure off. When I walk into a negotiating situation with a buyer or seller, what have you, I know only two things can happen, one of two things. I get what I wanted, or there's no deal at all. And lastly, on that subject, when negotiating, never be the first one to say the price, because your opening price might be better for them than the price they had in mind.
Mhm.
So they say first where they're starting. People say, well, I want to be in the lead. I want to, no, you don't. You want to know where they're at to start with, and then you can go from there. But even then, going from there means to the price you already decided in advance because it's pre-haggled, or the price that you're willing to pay because that was decided in your mind based on the facts, not emotion, not negotiating skills. Now, I don't have any negotiating skills to speak of, other than I'm a pretty good salesperson, because I don't have, that's one area of business I don't have to have.
Same here. I
I
don't
will give you,
negotiate.
yeah, I will give you $15 or $1,500 or $15,000. And as soon as you say that figure, we got a deal. If you don't say that figure, hey, it's been nice. One of my early business partners, Sam Mayo, he's gone now. He was sort of a wannabe mafia guy, but great guy. Uh, he said, Ben, you must learn the power of shutting the briefcase.
Ooh, I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
Power of shutting the okay, go.
And you understand symbolically what that means. We're going
Right.
back and forth, and this isn't gonna work out. I haven't heard the right figure, so you just get up,
Yeah, go
shut your
now.
briefcase,
Bye-bye.
click it, and say, "Hey, listen, it's been really neat, and,
Exactly.
we'll probably meet again down the trail somewhere." And if they're inclined to do business, they won't let you out of the door with your closed briefcase. So, you said you had a great negotiating story.
Well, I wouldn't call it a great negotiating story because I don't negotiate. I really
There you go.
don't.
Well, that's a great negotiating story.
Yeah, well, I just don't. With particularly with my web development, I know what it's going to take. I know how long it's going to take. I know what the markup that I have to add is for, scope creep, which is just awful, no matter what kind of project you're working on. So I know pretty much what my ranges are for certain types of website, and I don't deviate from them. And I remember when I was going to deviate once, I remember saying out loud to the client, you can't ever share that I offered you this. And I realized right then, I said, you know what? I'm taking the offer back because I just negotiated myself into something that I will be in trouble for down the road because of course you're going to tell other
Oh,
people.
right.
You know,
Everybody's got to as
that's
my
exactly right.
prison my prison friends told me, because when they like the 10 that just got out in Louisiana to run around the
Yeah.
countryside, 5 of them are.
Yeah, they're around here
All you
somewhere.
have to do is catch one,
Yeah.
because they will rat to the others. Everybody has a best friend. Everybody knows where you're headed. Everybody knows who turned off the water so you could do it. You see how long it took to turn him in, the
Right.
jail
Right.
worker, and they got 2 others at least that they're gonna get. But the saying in prison is, if you're gonna do a crime and you don't wanna spend time in prison, do it by yourself. If one other person knows.
Right? They're gonna tell. Well, with
Yeah.
this particular it was a failed negotiation because I caught myself immediately. I mean, it was a friend of mine and we still do business, but I wanted to do her a favor. And then I instantly said, I have to take that back because I just discounted something that's very important to you. It's very important to me. We'll both be irritated because I'll be mad when it's over and I haven't been able to pay my team. And she understood. And, we went ahead
Mhm.
and went on with it. But then recently, and I'm glad I caught it. And I apologized, said, I'm so sorry. That was just me getting my mouth got ahead of my brain. Happens a lot. So, I had somebody connect with me on LinkedIn and he had been listening to us, believe it or not. And he, and I'm not going to tell you the details because I don't want this man to feel like I'm trashing him. I'm not. And he had some terrific ideas and he wanted to do some things, but he wanted to barter. I don't barter ever. I learned my lesson very, very, very early on when I first started my web development company that bartering is going to give somebody a good scraunching, and I would be the one taking the scraunching. So I don't do that.
That's so bartering so far out of my thinking. When you said it, he wanted to barter,
I
I
wanted to
thought to myself
barter.
real quickly, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah,
It's just not part of my makeup. I don't barter for anything.
me either. And the worst part of it, and I never discussed it with him, but I went and looked at his website, and what he was wanting to barter for was something that I just don't need. And his rates was about triple what my rates are. It's like, how am I going to come out of this? So the answer was no, but thank you. You knew.
Absolutely. Uh, now that I understand what you meant by bartering,
Yeah,
that's so
he
far out of my
wanted to
thinking. But
trade. And I was like, no, 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 no. There's a huge payment disparity there. No.
my reaction to that would be, okay, let's break this down into 2 pieces. Do you want my product or service? Yes, fine. Here's how much it costs.
Right.
And wrap up the transaction. Now ask me if I want your product or service and the cost. Uh, Blah, blah, blah. I don't want that. Thank you very much. But I thought we were going to barter. No, we're not
No,
bartering. That's the
no.
point.
Yeah. You can pay me, I'll pay you, but there has to be some kind of equality. And there wasn't. There was never going to be. His rates were way, way higher than anything I would have ever paid for anyway, but I would have had to have built him 3 websites to just kinda catch up. So
Mhm.
it just wasn't there. And I was a bit surprised that he didn't recognize that, but, you know, I was very kind about it, said, "Listen, this is not gonna work, and this is why, but thank you." So we're staying in touch on LinkedIn, but I think he was disappointed that because he was very excited, "We can do this, we can." No, no, we can't. I'm sorry, but no. So
Well, our listeners, both Denise's lessons and my lessons are based on you decide in advance. And if it's your price, pre-haggle it. That's it. And if it's what you're willing to pay for something, decide in advance what that is. And if they pleasantly surprise you uh, with a lower thing, fantastic. Uh, but if they're being on, if you've developed a relationship based on know, like, trust, and feel safe with, they wouldn't be screwing you over to start with, and you shouldn't be screwing them over to start with. So you
exactly.
just keep them separate.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
if you have caught yourself going back on your own payment processes, your own worth, let's just say it what it is. I am worth this. My skills and my services are worth this. If you want to pay it, great. I would love to have you as a client. But if I go back on it and give myself and give you an out and give you a price that has me saying to you, you can't tell anybody about this because I'll have to call you a liar on the village square. Don't do it. Just don't do it. If they can't afford you or don't think that your value is sufficient for what they need, say thank you and walk off.
Absolutely. And uh, don't, I try, I'm not perfect at it, and I used to be horrible at it. Don't say anything to a prospect or make any promises to a prospect that you don't want to see on the front page of your local paper or
Mm.
the New York Times or something. Because in the underground world of word of mouth, word will spread.
Oh yeah.
The Gigi and some of her girlfriends do that. This little circle, they all met in kindergarten, and they're all 72 now. And they've, without a break, they've all known and loved each other through that entire time. And she'll say, I told so and so, but I made a promise not to tell anybody else. I said, honey, by sundown, everybody in that circle, I think there's about 10 of them, everyone in that circle's gonna know unless they're out of town. And within 6 hours of getting back in town, they're all gonna know, and they're all gonna say to each other, now don't tell anyone I told you this.
And don't text it to anyone. I accidentally on Mother's Day, I was sending out, I'm up at all hours. I don't sleep a whole lot. And at 5 in the morning, which is 3 o'clock in the morning for you, I sent my sister a happy Mother's Day. And I went, oh, geez, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And she's asked me before very kindly to not text her before 8 o'clock in the morning, which I try not to, but I had been working for hours and I thought everybody was awake apparently. So I sent her an email. I didn't want to retext her. And I said, I am so sorry. You can, you know, basically text me out. And you know what that means? I can't. And she hasn't. And I'm waiting because I know she's going to get me it may be Christmas Day. I don't know, but she's going to get me.
Does she have an off button on her phone?
Yeah, but she doesn't turn it off
Well, see,
because,
that's the problem.
well,
When I
she
when
can't. Her
I
husband
decide,
has cochlear implants and she needs to be able to, if he picks up his phone and calls her because he can't hear her,
yeah,
she needs to be aware.
all right, there are individual things. I'm a little
Yeah.
loosey-goosey on that with GD, especially when Tony, her our son, but her biological son, was a little younger. Uh, he's a grown man now, but when he was younger, I'd say, she said, well, he has to be able to reach me. I said, all
Mm.
right, fine. Put it on silent so it only buzzes, and I will allow you to look down at your buzzing phone. And if it's not Tony, you don't answer.
Right.
Fine. And even that was a compromise for me because when I'm done for the day or the evening or whatever, I turn my phone off.
Oh, I
And
do too.
Yeah,
I just got a really nice message from a friend the other day, and I had my phone off all weekend. She said, "I wondered if you were still alive." I said, "Yeah, but the phone was off." But
yeah,
a lot of people don't understand that. When I'm done, I'm done.
yep. When I've wrapped it up for the day or the week, or we go away for one of our long weekends, no phone. I can always go back and check, make sure. But one of the things I say to somebody, let's say Pat Hall is a dear friend of mine, 30 some odd years. Uh, and when I'm done or at that raggedy edge of only if you're like you, if your name pops up, there are exceptions to the rule. But I say to Pat when I answer, are you bleeding from an open artery? And if he says no, I said, good, call back tomorrow. Bye.
Right.
Yes.
See, we are so much alike. We really are. No patience, no no filters, no nothing. But
Well, I don't have to know if I have patience because under that program, you don't have to have patience. You have to have a disconnect button.
which I do. I
Yeah.
really do. And that's part of boundaries as salespeople, as podcasters, as mentors, whatever hat we're wearing. We have to understand our boundaries. And I will tell people, don't step foot that line right there. Don't mess with it. Seriously, don't. And they get it. They know when I'm dead serious about it. Do not test me on this because once I will tell you no, I'll tell you no once. I'll tell you no twice. That's a courtesy only. There is no third time.
We won't have the third conversation.
Nope, it won't exist. No is no is no. So, what are we going to talk about next week?
Whatever you wish. I've become, of course, thanks to Dr. Hill, I'm a fanatical note taker. But what I've done during the week for the last 3 or 4 weeks is take a separate set of notes for you and me. And that are, in essence, they were questions when they came up during a coaching session, perhaps. And it's a question that I think everybody could benefit from. So I'm going to rely heavily on that system from now on because I find that the people, almost everybody has a question, is a question that just about everybody else wonders about.
Right.
I've always said if you've been in selling over 30 days, you've heard every objection that you're ever going to hear that's not unique to a current event or unique to a new product that you have. And once you had that new product or service for 30 days, again, you've heard everything you're ever going to hear. So I find that in taking notes of what Bob in Omaha asked, uh, Bob in Alabama also wants to know that. So I've gotten much more aggressive about doing it and less aggressive about, and now let's turn to paragraph 3. One of
Right.
one of the things it's become sort of a catchphrase that I use from time to time, but in various forms, I have heard thousands of times, Mr. Gay, I'd give anything to know what you know about selling. So good news. The basics that I know about selling will only cost you about $40. Go to, give them the website, go to so and so and get the closers part 1 and 2. And when the closers part 4, yours comes out, and we're
Yeah, I
already
wrote
beyond
about that
that.
this morning. Yeah.
5, 6, 7 are coming. When somebody asks me in the future, in the near future, uh, blah, 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 podcasting. I said, oh, good news. I'm going to give you the phone number of someone that you might want to reach out to and contact. She teaches that for a living. And in the meantime, go to website and order the closers part 4. She didn't withhold anything. I've seen, speaking to you today, I know I've read enough of it to know you haven't withheld anything. You
No,
you
no.
put in writing what it took you 17 years to learn, and some of the stuff I've read you've learned very recently. So my point is you're still learning. So it's down. Earl Nightingale used to say, if you have a secret and you want to keep it, write a book about it and put a free copy in every library in the world. He said,
Right.
your secret will be secure. So if you want to know everything I know about selling, buy the closers parts 1 and 2. If you're really brave, get sales closing power. If you're doubly brave, get the art and science of resort sales, which by the way is a secret bomb in the closer series. Dennis Waitley and I wrote it for the timeshare and vacation ownership business. And I'm very proud of it. It's done a lot of people a lot of good between the closers part 1 and that book. We pretty much built the modern timeshare industry, vacation ownership. But then people started saying, I don't even know why I bought it, but I bought the art and science resort sales and I sell cars. In the early days, I would say, why? Why'd you buy it? Well, if it had to do with selling and your name's on the cover, I just felt like I ought to have it. Then I started getting the feedback. That book is amazing. All I have to do is change a word here or there, and it becomes an automobile selling book, or it becomes a real estate book, or whatever.
So
Because
it's a primer. It
yeah,
acts as a primer for whatever industry.
yeah, there are just lots of things in there that are widely applicable. And Dennis and I went out of our way to say timeshare every few minutes, and so it's not a secret who we aimed it at, but they've managed to work their way around it. Lots of people love it, and I would add that. So the point is, it's all available. If you want to know the most valuable things that I know about selling, I mean, the crux of the matter, you get the closers part 2, you go to page 257 to start with, read the whole book. But to start with, you go there and you read Sales Infiltration. Every great salesperson I have ever known, including the greatest one that I've ever personally worked with, Jimmy Rucker, um, every single one of them is a sales infiltrator, even if they've never heard the term. That's what they do. That's what they are. And I wrote it all down. It's not some deep, dark Shriner's Mason secret hidden in the basement of Funk and Wagnall. It's readily available, but you do have to read it. And you mentioned today before we got on for everybody, uh, what you reminded me of what Dr. Napoleon Hill said to me up at the house one day. I said, how does it, Think and Grow Rich was sitting on the coffee table. I said, how does it feel to have written one of the best-selling books of all time? They used to say second only to the Bible. And he said, best-selling, least read. So you have to buy the books where the information is. Everything I know about selling is right there. And then you have to read it. And then you have to do the secret message in Think and Grow Rich. You have to act on it. Take
Take
action.
action.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
I'm
else
always
it's
surprised when people say, oh, I've read that book. Really, what's the primary, what's the primary thing that you learned? Oh, this, and what kind of action do you take? Oh, you didn't read the book. You did not read the book.
Dr. Hill used to get the biggest kick out of that. He said he would see it in people's offices, pick it up, open it, and the spine had never been
You've been
cracked.
correct.
It
I
was there
know.
for display purposes only. And then if it had been cracked, but wasn't heavily marked up and everything, he said, I'll just talk to them for 4 or 5 minutes. That's all it takes for me to know they've never read the book.
I know. It's really sad. Okay, where can people go find the closers 1 and 2, the other books that you've mentioned, and eventually my book, podcasting.
They can go,
Podcasting as marketing, by the way. It's part 4,
yep,
podcasting as marketing.
which it is. It's great. And as I said earlier, anybody asks me about podcasts, I send them to you, and or soon we'll be able to tell them to get the book. So the answer to your question is to get the current closers series, one of them, all of them, whatever. Go to stores, STORES dot ebay dot com / and this is all one word, Ronzoni Books, RONZONI RONEBOOKS, runs only books. There you get the best pricing other than used, but when you go there, by the way, you'll see used books, not from us, just because those people tie things together. So if you want a new, fresh copy, great pricing, free shipping, signed and dated, and you don't want bubble gum in the pages. Somebody called the other day and said, "Can I return the book? This one has bubble gum in it." And I said, "No, you didn't get it here. I make a rule. I rarely chew gum, and when I do, I don't put it in the pages." He
No, it
said,
goes under the desk.
"Yeah." So,
If you're gonna
yeah,
do
up
it, do
under
it
the
right.
desk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I said, "Where'd you get it?" He said, "I don't know. So I got a good deal on it used." I said, "Well, you've learned a lesson. So not only you learn how to sell, you've learned a lesson on how to buy things. You tried to cheap your way into selling and it didn't work." So stores.ebay.com/run Zony Books is how you get it.
Well, we are out of time. So how can people connect? Are you still doing I wanted to ask you this very quickly. Do you have room in your mentorship program right now?
Probably so. I just sent out a thing saying I had a couple of spots open, and it's not literally a couple of spots, it's some room because of retirements and one death and so on. But so if you're interested in my mentoring program, I will send you free information, no cost, no obligation, and no one's going to phone you and harass you. You ask for the information, we send it, you then act on it, or you don't. You'll never hear from us again on that subject. Just shoot me an email. B is in Ben, F is in Frank, G is in Gay, the number three, BFG3 at directcon, DIRECTCON, short for direct connect, .net. And on the subject line, one word will do it, put mentoring. I'll know exactly what you want and we'll get the information out to you.
Got it. Well, listen, everybody, thank you for joining us for week 15. Can you believe? 15 of the Closers Inner Circle podcast masterclass. And as always, it's an honor to bring these powerful insights and terrific stories that Ben shares. And remember, mastery doesn't come from information alone. And Ben has kind of, said that quite a bit today. It comes from implementation. Say it for me, Ben. Implementation.
There
There's
you go.
I got it. I had to look
Give
at
her some room,
it.
guys. She's Southern.
I'm Southern, and
We have trouble with the English language.
we do, but we do well with gestures. We're okay with
I can see
those.
that.
Yeah. Even the nuns around here, they don't have any trouble with that at all. But yeah, what Ben is saying, what I'm saying is pick these things up and do it. Take action, as Dr. Napoleon Hill, beat into Ben's head, and then Ben beat it into my head. Take action. So take what you've learned today and put it into motion. Revisit the chapter. Again, it opens up on page 257 of the Closers, Part 2. Take notes, practice the techniques, make them second nature, and ask us questions. We're here to help. So we will see you next week as we continue building your sales infiltration toolbox, one proven step at a time. Until then, stay sharp, stay focused, and keep closing. Ben, I'll see you next week.
Have a great week.
It's getting ready to storm here, so I think I might shut things down for a little bit. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.